The wind cut through the barren plains with a sharpness that mirrored the fear in Emily's heart as she ran across the frozen earth, her breath tearing through the silence in ragged bursts. Behind her lay a home that had never felt like one, a marriage built not on love but on control, fear, and the heavy weight of promises she never truly gave. She had been married off young, barely understanding what a vow meant, and for years she endured a life that drained her spirit and dimmed the fire in her soul. Every smile she forced, every bruise she concealed, every night spent praying for escape. Each moment had piled into a mountain of suffering until one bitter winter evening she could no longer stay. With nothing but the clothes on her back and courage burning brighter than the fear that chased her, she fled into the cold, the snow crunching beneath her boots as though cheering her on. The sky stretched wide, endless and indifferent, and for a time she wondered if freedom would cost her life. Her hands trembled as the icy wind cut into her skin, her bonnet whipping against her face. She thought of turning back more than once, not because she wanted to, but because the vast wilderness seemed crueler than the home she left. But then she remembered the look in her husband's eyes, the last time he raised his hand, the final threat he hissed into her ear, and she pressed forward. Death in the snow felt more merciful than a life in chains, and so she kept walking until her legs gave out. She fell to her knees, clutching the rough wool shawl tighter around her shoulders, tears stinging against the raw air. The world blurred, and for a fleeting moment, she thought this was the end. That was when she heard the sound, hoofbeats pounding against the frozen earth, steady, strong, like the heartbeat of the land itself. She lifted her gaze, and through the haze of her tears and exhaustion she saw him, a lone rider, tall and resolute against the burning sky, his hat casting a shadow across his face, his coat lined with frost. A stranger, yet something about him felt like destiny had carved his path to meet hers. He reined in his horse, eyes narrowing as he took in the fragile figure before him. Without a word, he dismounted and approached, his movements calm but purposeful, as though he had rescued souls from storms before. Emily tried to speak, but only a broken whisper escaped. The stranger crouched down, his gloved hand steady as he reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a thick blanket, rough wool and shearling that carried the scent of earth and campfires. He wrapped it around her shoulders with a tenderness she hadn't felt in years, and in that small act, she felt something shift inside her, safety, warmth, hope. "You're freezing," he said, his voice deep but gentle, carrying both strength and kindness. "You're safe now." She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that safety existed anywhere in this world, but doubt still clung to her like ice. "Why would you help me?" she asked, her voice trembling. He met her gaze steadily, the warmth in his eyes cutting through the cold. "Because no one should have to face the world alone." His name was Luke, a cowboy who had seen his share of storms, not just in weather but in life. He had buried friends, lost family, and yet still chose kindness in a world that often gave none. He helped Emily to her feet, steadying her as though she were more precious than the fragile snowflakes falling around them. Together they walked to his horse, and he lifted her gently into the saddle before climbing up behind her. As they rode across the frozen plains, the warmth of his coat pressing against her back, Emily felt her fear begin to melt away. It was the first time in years she allowed herself to breathe deeply, to believe she could live without chains. The days that followed were a blur of survival and healing. Luke led her to his homestead, a small cabin nestled against the hills, modest but built with care. He gave her space, never pushing her to speak but always ensuring she had food, warmth, and quiet moments to rest. At night, when the fire crackled low, she would catch him watching the flames with a distant look, as though he carried burdens of his own. Slowly, words began to slip between them. Emily told him pieces of her story, the fragments she could bear to relive, and though sorrow shadowed his eyes, he never interrupted, never judged. He simply listened, and in his silence, she found a sanctuary she had never known. In turn, he told her of his past, the family he lost, the battles he fought, the loneliness that rode with him like a constant companion. They were two souls scarred by life, yet in each other, they began to find a strange and unexpected healing. One evening, as snow blanketed the land outside and the fire cast golden light across the room, Emily found herself laughing. The sound startled her, a melody she hadn't heard from her own lips in years. Luke smiled softly, his eyes warm as embers. "That's a sound I could get used to," he said. And in that moment, she realized how deeply she had begun to trust him. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between them grew like roots pressing into fertile soil. He taught her how to ride with confidence, how to steady her aim with a rifle, how to mend fences and light fires strong enough to last the night. She in turn brought warmth into his home, sewing curtains for his windows, cooking meals that filled the cabin with comfort, and reminding him that even in a hard world, softness could survive. Yet shadows lingered. The man she had fled still lived, and in quiet moments, Emily feared he would come for her. One evening, as they sat by the fire, she confessed her fear, her voice shaking as she spoke of the past she had run from. Luke's expression hardened, not with anger at her, but with a fierce determination. He took her hand rough and warm and held it tightly. "If he comes," Luke said, his voice steady, "as stone, he'll have to go through me first. And I promise you, Emily, you'll never face fear alone again." The words struck deeper than any vow she had ever heard, because they were not just promises, but truth spoken from the heart of a man who had already proven his worth. That night, wrapped in the same blanket he had given her when they first met, Emily lay awake listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. For the first time, she dared to dream of a future not marked by fear but by love. She realized then that the cowboy had not just given her warmth from the cold, he had given her back her life. And slowly, in the quiet strength of his arms, she began to believe in love again. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There are many more stories of hope, love, and resilience waiting for you, and your support helps us bring them to life. Hit that subscribe button and join us for the next journey.